It's been 30 months since the iPhone 13 was officially launched, so I think it's a very good time to review it, to make an updated review on this phone to find out if it's still worth it in 2024. And surely, it's worth mentioning that you need to have a good protective case like just I have here. It's really good for protecting your iPhone, the edges and the screen itself. As always, we're going to start by talking a little bit about the exterior design. One of the strengths on this iPhone and, well, on pretty much every iPhone in general. As you can see, it is made out of aluminum and glass of very good quality with that iconic attention to detail we can see in all Apple products, and that really makes you feel like it's worth the money you've paid for it. You can criticize Apple for a lot of things. They make very expensive phones, their operating system is very closed and as opposed to Android, or the cameras are not as good as on this other phone. But you can never say that iPhones are ugly. From the most expensive to the cheapest model, they're all incredibly beautiful and they all feel incredibly luxurious in your hand. But anyways, let's move on to the performance section to talk about the processor more specifically, which in this phone is the A15 Bionic chip. Right now, fun fact, one of the top fastest mobile processors in the world. So, of course, the speed and fluidity that you're going to feel when using it are as flagship top tier line as it gets. There's no game that can't be played at maximum settings. There's no application that doesn't open up instantaneously. It is as good as it gets. In fact, right now in 2024, it doesn't differ that much from what we can see in the Pro model, the 14 Pro Max. I would even say that for day-to-day usage, it doesn't differ that much from what we can see on the Pro model from this year, the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Maybe for very demanding tasks, there's a noticeable difference, but for day-to-day tasks, they're almost identical. It's time to talk about the most important part of the video. It's time to talk about the cameras. As you can see, I'm recording right now with the main sensor on the iPhone 13, and wow! It looks amazing. As you can see, we get some decent background blur. We get a lot of detail, a lot of dynamic range. This looks almost identical to the video quality on my iPhone 15 Pro, which is double the price of the iPhone 13. More specifically, we get two cameras on the back of the iPhone 13. We get this main sensor that I just told you about, and then we also get an ultra-wide camera, more specifically a 0.5x, that has a slightly smaller sensor and slightly less premium optics, so it's not going to give you as good of a quality as you get. But let's talk about the display, which is the least interesting and most boring component on the iPhone 13, because it has a very similar panel, not to say identical, to the one on the iPhone 12, which, sure, it is technically a pretty good panel. It has very good contrast, very good calibration. It has relatively thin bezels, but it doesn't have any of the fancy features we can find in pretty much every other Android phone on the same price range. Especially, and I've talked about this many times, it doesn't have 120 Hertz. It's locked at 60 Hertz. And that's embarrassing because, as I said, every other Android has either 90 or 120 Hertz, which from experience I can tell you is very nice to have if you care about these kind of things. Some people are going to say it doesn't matter because the average consumer doesn't notice, but these phones are not only bought by average consumers, they were bought by geeks and techies like me who appreciate a fluid experience that you only get with 120 Hertz. And if you're going to spend all these money, might as well get the latest, greatest features like you would get on the other Android phones. The best 4K video you can find on a smartphone, a much longer telephoto lens, which it's not going into the super zoom of some of the others, but those phones also lose quality as you zoom into like 10 times, 15 times. At 3 times, the iPhone still looks very sharp. A massively improved ultra-wide, which I use all the time. I love that lens, so I'm glad to see it moving forward. And just overall, this is a very well-rounded camera that has some bonus features like cinematic mode. I think people will use it in the same way as portrait mode. It's like a fun bonus for social media. Probably not a professional tool yet, but I hope they keep moving forward with it.